What's up guys, my name is Marc Steiner, and today we are going to be testing out the brand new Davinci Resolve for iPad. I'm so excited, I've been waiting so long for this. Let's dive right into it and see what it's really like. Now that Davinci Resolve is finally out of beta, this is what it looks like on an M2 11-inch iPad Pro. This is the 512GB model, which means it comes with 8GB of RAM, not the 16GB of RAM you get on the 1 or 2TB versions. As you can see, this is basically the desktop UI that you're getting on the iPad, which is really, really nice. My first impressions are it's really good. You have the inspector here, you have everything you basically want on the desktop version. So it's not a mobile oriented version. It is very much the desktop class version that they've brought over to fit the iPad, which I think is very, very important. So as you can see here, I've already imported some footage, and the first thing that I want to do is actually rotate this footage a little bit so it's completely centered. And I'm just gonna do, I think, 0.5 and see how that looks. That looks pretty good. And then we're gonna zoom in to compensate for that. Scrubbing seems to be pretty good.
I've been using this 5-in-1 USB-C hub from Anchor.
With absolutely no color grade on whatsoever, it is handling this footage very, very well, and I know that this footage in particular is very, very difficult. This is H.265 footage from my A7 IV, which is actually very, very difficult footage to decode, so the fact that this is handling it very, very well goes to show that this is a powerful device, and I'm actually very hopeful about how things are going to go down. If we go into the color tab and we play it back as is,
the keyboard that I'm pairing with,
we are playing back at 24 frames per second, which is what this was shot in, so we're playing back at full resolution with no lag whatsoever, with no color grade. And for me, honestly, I think that is the most important part, because the way that I was planning on using this is a mobile to go cut and edit version, and then when I get back to my desktop or laptop, save that file, import it, and have the rough cut already done, and then do the more intensive stuff like color grading and audio stuff on a more powerful machine that does actually have the full suite of all the things Davinci Resolve has to offer. Even though this does feature the full desktop UI, which is great, it does have a few concessions. Right now, there are only the cut page and the color grading page, which in all honesty are the most important ones and the ones you're gonna be using the most. However, I do like the edit page on desktop. That's how I prefer to edit my videos. It's just cleaner, it's easier for me, and it allows me to work faster in my workflow. And I do like having the dedicated Fairlight page for when I'm syncing audio or doing some EQ correction or whatnot. That is really nice to have. Davinci Resolve has already announced that they are going to be bringing some of those desktop class tabs to the iPad version, like the Fairlight tab. So this is just gonna get more powerful as the days go on, and this will just continue to improve and become a real rival to the desktop class version instead of a supplementary tool, which I think it is right now in its current state. On this, we have the audio effects that I would be normally using. So let's go down to the vocal channel and we'll just drag that on, and boom, we have this right here, which is absolutely amazing. So if I want to do high pass, and then I just want to bring that lower to, let's say, 74, perfect. And then we're gonna bring the mid frequencies, about 800, and then we're gonna bring that down. And then the high frequencies, we're just gonna bring up a little bit, nice little like S-curve-ish. Yeah, there we go. I'm gonna bring that down a little bit more. There we go. And low frequencies, there we go. There we go, wonderful. Perfect. So we're just gonna add that on there. We're gonna add a compressor, which I love doing. It always makes the audio sound a little bit more crisp. We're gonna do a ratio of 1. And we're gonna do a threshold of 0. I'm gonna go a reaction a little bit more and a gain of 2.5. All right, cool, that works.
K6 Pro. I love this keyboard so much.
Wonderful. All right, so we just did a little compressor and vocal channel audio effect, and that took it very well.
It's a 65% keyboard.
There's no lag or anything as I'm editing through this, so that's really, really good. So that effect works perfectly fine, and that's honestly the only audio effect I tend to use on my dialogue in these talking head situations. One thing that I'm seeing right now is that because I shot this video separately from the audio and then synced it in post, there's no way for me to link it currently, which is something that I like to do, so I don't like that they're free-flowing and independent of one another. I'd like to link them so that when I'm cutting them, it does work very, very cleanly, and I can just ripple delete everything, but I can't currently do that. But again, very minor thing considering how powerful this application is. It's nice that the window is adjustable to some extent, but at the same time, I think that's kind of pointless because it's not the edit page, so there's not a lot of flexibility, so you're kind of limited to do what you can do with the timeline. But if you do have multiple streams of video, I guess that is somewhat helpful, but you're not allowed to resize these streams in any way, so that kind of irks me again. Also, right off the bat, there doesn't seem to be any keyboard customization or being able to do some custom keystrokes and commands, which is another thing that I really like on the desktop version, that I can just pick and choose what keys I want to do what. If you're coming from Davinci Resolve, or if you're coming from Final Cut, or if you're coming from Premiere Pro, you're used to different key bindings and you can manually input those and have full customization over what your keystrokes do. So as far as I'm seeing right now, that's not available in the mobile version. When we right click, we are a bit limited to what we see. So there's not that much that we can do here right now. And the most important ones obviously are going to be split. That's basically your blade tool right now. And I guess let's try and see if we can delete these things. Can we ripple delete? I wonder. There we go. Okay, if we ripple it, nope, we still cannot ripple delete. And there's no right click to ripple delete there. Okay, so we can just delete the blank space.
And of course, it's just going to take.
Okay, all right. So it's not quite as intuitive as the desktop version, but it seems to be taking things very, very well. And I have no real issue with that right now. So as I continue to scroll through the timeline, we're not having any real issues, which I really like. It will take some getting used to with the split and whatnot. It is touch control definitely enabled, so if you have an Apple Pencil and you like working like that, that can work. I'm not about the Apple Pencil life. I much prefer the keyboard. I think it is the best accessory you can get for the iPad. But what I am more intrigued by is the color grading tool. And so if we go over to the color grading tab, you can see that we have basically the full color grading suite available. Okay, so there is a new node button. It is most definitely more touchscreen intuitive for the node tree. You definitely don't want to be scrolling because it is far too slow. But we have a node here now. I'm just going to do some basic corrections and I'm gonna add another node. Perfect. So if you are new to Davinci Resolve and you don't have your own LUTs or color workflow, I'm just gonna take you through the easiest thing ever. So this was shot in S-Log3, so I'm just gonna add a color space transform and we're gonna scroll down and match what we have here. So S-Log3.cine and then down to S-Log3 and boom, we have our Rec 709 conversion LUT already there, which is awesome. So our footage looks great now. Is there any way for me to minimize this? I can. Yeah, okay, so you can actually move these around. So we're just gonna get to a playhead where my face is in the shot. There we go. And I'm just gonna go down here and I'm going to do my color changes. So I'm gonna bring that down. I'm gonna bring the whites up. I'm gonna bring my midtones down a bit. There we go. Maybe -2. And then my blacks, we'll bring that down to a little bit there. And then I'll bring up my midtones just a little bit. Perfect. So you can see again what that is accomplishing. Now I already have a node tree made for my usual talking head workflow. So I'm going to import that into Davinci Resolve. So we're gonna go here, we're gonna go to the gallery and we have that imported right here, which I really, really like. If you want to import your own, you can go here and you can then go to a hard drive or the files you have saved on your iPad and just import them right there. I have the DRX and DPX files that I transferred from my laptop over to the hard drive and now the iPad. So that's how I was able to import that. So you import that and now we're just gonna right click and we're gonna apply the grade. So here, if we get rid of our clips and we get rid of our gallery, this takes up a good amount of space and then we can resize the window, which I actually really, really like. So here our little initial color node is a little bright, so I'm gonna bring this down and instantaneously the effects that I have on here it just breaks down. We're at 12 to 13 frames per second, so there is a significant lag when there's a color grade going on there. We're gonna turn on this glow effect, which is probably the one that's slowing it down, honestly. We're gonna turn that on. Because we're using this glow effect, that's what's slowing down our timeline here. Once we turn on that effect, we're going between 12 and 13 frames per second. So that is that's the big deal right there. I am curious though. Let's turn this on And I currently have my timeline set to 4K. So if I then go, there doesn't seem to be any way to lower the resolution of your viewing window, but there is a way to just bring down the timeline, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it could be a weird workaround where you edit everything and it does just kind of lower the timeline resolution because it's now 1080, and then you could just bump it back up to full 4K when you're done editing.
Oh, I've been using this.
And from what I've seen right now, the fact that this thing is, you know, it's smooth. I think just turning it to that 1080p timeline, there's no lag whatsoever. We're at that full 24 frames per second. There's no drop frames whatsoever. So it seems to be the viewer is more of the issue than the actual footage and the color grading. So if Davinci Resolve could find a way to lower the timeline viewing image from full resolution, which I assume it's currently doing, which is why it's struggling, to 1080 or even 720, because you're on such a small screen, it wouldn't be that much of a hit to performance. So I think that that would be a feature I would like to see in the near future. But the second we go back up to full res 4K,
Anchor 5-in-1
we're just struggling. We are just struggling to get those frames across. It's very, very laggy and choppy. So I think in a perfect world, if you want to edit at full resolution in 4K, you might want to just do a very light Rec 709 or LUT conversion instead of doing a full heavy color grade, because that will really, really start to slow you down, and that's a little bit unfortunate. But
USB-C hub for a while now, and it works absolutely.
if you do want to edit at full resolution and you have just a simple Rec 709 LUT on there, it'll do the job. So now that we've done some color grading and some cutting and editing, I want to see how long it will take to export something. So right now I have an in and out point set for a 5-minute clip, so I want to see how fast that will export. We do have the footage that is color graded just lightly with the Rec 709, exposure, and then skin tone adjustments, so nothing too crazy, nothing too harsh. And I do have custom timeline settings. If we go to the export menu here, again, we're kind of limited to what we're allowed to do here. So there's not as much customization as on the desktop version, and there doesn't seem to be any other options for me to type in perfect resolutions or bit rate or stuff like that. So I'm just gonna do the H.264 master here, and as you can see, we have 3840 by 1920, H.264, 23.976 frames per second. That's a pretty good test run to see how long this will take to export. So I'm gonna hit export. It allows you to pick the export destination, which is really nice. You can export it to the iPad, or you can export it to a external hard drive, which is what I'm currently working off of. And we shall hit save and see how long that takes. So right now it's estimating 4 minutes at 30 FPS. So it is going faster than real time. That is a very good sign. The fact, again, this is not easy footage, and the fact that it's going pretty good is not a bad sign at all. So we've dipped a little bit from the 30 FPS that we started off at, but we're still at 24 FPS. I think the lowest I saw it drop was 23 FPS, so that's kind of nice. We're going real time-ish, so we shall see how long this takes to actually go through. And just like that, that 5-minute export is now done. It's almost a gigabyte. It's 800 megabytes. So for a 5-minute, that sounds about right. In my export on desktop, it would be a little bit higher because I would have a higher bit rate. But it did export at the correct resolution, 3840 by 1920. I like that 2:1 aspect ratio. And it seems like everything is in order. So, you know, it is very viable. I would definitely use this for quick content social media when I didn't have access to my desktop. It doesn't feel like it's completely complete just yet. It is still very much a supplemental tool, and I think I was hoping that this would be more of a rough cut editing machine and then import it onto the desktop, saving that file and doing everything else on a actual dedicated editing machine. But from what I can tell, this is a very, very good first effort from Davinci Resolve. I would not give it an A+, I would not give it a 10 out of 10. There is still stuff that I would like to have out of this app, and I don't know if it's ever going to compete completely with the desktop class version. I am a little bit sad that there doesn't seem to be shortcuts that I can easily access, and the blade tool and whatnot are not the most intuitive and whatnot. I can't link my video and my audio just yet. If you guys know how to do this, let me know in the comment section down below. But as I can tell right now, this is a very, very good first step, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Davinci Resolve can do for the iPad in the near future. This application alone is really taking the iPad to the next level and showing that it is a pro level device, and I'm really a fan of that. Those are my initial impressions on Davinci Resolve for the iPad. I want to know what you guys think. Do you think this is the future of video editing? Do you think it's exactly what you expected? Or do you think it's more supplemental? Or do you think it still has a way to go? I think it's more on the supplemental / it still has a way to go before it becomes super, super viable, but I'm very excited to see how this progresses in the future. Davinci Resolve, you're doing great. Proud of the work you're doing. Love to see future updates get even better. So, my name has been Marc Steiner, and I'll see you next time.